no matter what, this was not the outcome anyone was looking for, obviously. Now, in the months after Thomas's death, Velma came to rely even more on the tranquilizers to get her through the day. The life insurance policy on Thomas barely covered the funeral or any of the other costs associated with his death. And that meant that Velma didn't have the luxury of taking any moment off from work to grieve, go through any of it. He was still her husband.
Yeah.
As much as that whole relationship had disintegrated and it was shit, that's the father of your children. You were still living with him. You hadn't divorced yet.
Yeah, there's always some kind of love there, I'm sure.
There's something there, you know, and that's just a shock.
Yeah.
And so Velma pushed herself to stay focused on work, which was at Belk's department store.
Okay.
She had been employed there for several years. And it gave her something to focus on and build her days up. She was just really, like, moving forward. And she also liked it because she could take rare moments aside to chat with her friend, Pauline Barfield, who worked in the store next to Velma's. And they had known each other for a while. They became very close, like Velma's closest friend. Very much her confidant, and had on several occasions she had introduced Velma to her husband, Jennings. And like they were just like best friends. Like she told her everything. Now, just a few months after Thomas's death, Velma was dealt another blow when she received news that Pauline had died unexpectedly from a cerebral hemorrhage.
Oh shit!
It was a shock. A shock. Yeah. And it was even more of a shock because one of the things that they always talked about was that Pauline's husband Jennings had been disabled by emphysema and diabetes, and they honestly thought he was the one that most likely passed away first. So this was like a real shock. And it was probably equally surprising when Velma found herself in a full-blown relationship with Jennings.
So I was gonna ask that because the Barfield of it all.
Yeah.
What? That happens though. Like I've heard of that more off, like a lot. Like I've heard about it a lot.
I don't understand.
I think it's some weird brief time.
Yeah, I would haunt the shit out of
no
any of my friends.
Retweet. I would poltergeist that shit all the way up.
Or fucking
Oh, mark my words.
like, yeah.
Oh, I
mean,
told
that's
Drew.
It's just black and white for me. I'll ruin your fucking.
Even if it's not my best friend, you can't be wrong. Sorry.
Yeah. I'll become a demon.
Sorry.
I'll become a demon specifically so I can ruin your life.
Yeah, exactly.
So just know that.
But isn't that strange?
It is. It's a strange phenomenon
I
that
told
happens.
a story like that recently.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't put my finger on exactly who it was, but I have heard of that like multiple times.
Didn't it happen with Stevie Nicks?
Yes.
Didn't she? It's like
Then she had like a come to Jesus
Yeah.
microwave.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, but that shows, like, it's a strange phenomenon.
It is. It really is. And I think a lot of it. Diabetes alone is a lot to manage. Diabetes mixed with emphysema.
And she was ill-equipped to provide these things.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of the increased stress, she began relying more on Valium to get through the day.
Valium.
And it didn't take long for Velma to realize Jennings' health problems, well, certainly not his fault, were at least partially worsened by his refusal to follow any doctor's orders to make any kind of life improvements.
Oh, no.
He had bad emphysema, but he wouldn't quit smoking. The same was true of his diabetes. He wouldn't change his diet or exercise. And the only things worse for Velma was, he said, the more obstinate he became, the more medicine I took. The more exasperated I grew, the more desperate.
Whoa.
And these are the things, though, where it's like, Velma, you're just blaming everyone else. You took the action here. You married this man you don't love.
Right.
You knew he had health problems.
Right.
And now you're blaming his health problems on your stuff. Like, you're blaming your stuff on his health problems.
Right.
When you knew what you were entering into.
Right.
You knew it. Pauline told you.
Yeah.
You were best friends. You were confidants. She told you what he needed.
Yeah.
So it's like you went into this knowing he was going to have a lot of things that he needed.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably knew that he was pretty stubborn and he wasn't going to change shit, because I'm sure Pauline told you that. You're best friends. That's what you tell your best friend.
100%.
And it's like, and you married him knowing you didn't love him.
Well, and I think that's the root
You've been
of the
down
whole
this
issue.
road before.
Because if you loved him, these things wouldn't be as
if you loved
big of a
him,
deal.
you could, sink
You'd
your
see
heels
past it
in and
all.
you'd be like, let's go.
Right.
Like, you
well,
didn't love him.
anything.
So this didn't hit the same. And it's like, you're not recognizing that you're doing this shit to yourself.
I can't imagine walking down the aisle to a man that I didn't
Oh
love.
no.
Like, to know, because you hear that. People are like, oh, like on my wedding day.
Like, I knew it.
Right before I walked
It's
down
like,
the aisle, I
what
was
the
like, am I
fuck were
doing
you
the right
doing?
thing? And it's like, why did you,
Damn.
like,
Yeah, like,
why
what
did
the
you go
fuck?
through all of that?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Now, Velma had been married to Jennings for less than a year, and she already felt more trapped than she ever had before. And to make matters worse, Robbie had graduated from high school that spring and began working at the cola company where his father was once employed. But in the fall, he was going off to the University of South Carolina. Which, like, good for these kids for, like, getting into college
Hell
and shit.
yeah.
Like, good on you for
With
all the shit that was going on in your lives. Good job.
That's huge.
But Velma was going to lose one of the few constant sources of happiness and support that she had left in her life. Now,
This is horrible.
yeah, so, and so she was already worried about Ronnie graduating, going to college. Then he was drafted into the Army a few months later with plans to be sent to Vietnam during one of the biggest troop surges. Now, by the winter of 1971, life had become,
Unbearable?
yeah, just suffocating for Velma, who was honestly in this awful cycle of depression, addiction, hopelessness, and also self-sabotage that she was just
Big
constantly cycling through. She was full of regret. She was now very resentful of Jennings.
That's not fair.
She felt that he trapped her in the marriage that she didn't really want.
Girly Pop, you said yes.
Yeah. And then those feelings turned darker.
Oh no, not Jennings.
Now, all the death, abuse, depression, addiction, disappointment she had cycled through, she found herself wishing Jennings was dead.
She's gonna kill her best friend's husband after she married him months after she died.
She was really wanting to be free of what she considered to be a burden.
There's this thing. It's called divorce.
Yeah, you know of it. Go for it, girl.
I know it can be messy, but you know what is messier?
But
murder.
And you know what? Everything's messy at this point. Like, let's go.
Seriously.
Now, in late March of 1971, fueled by anger and, whatever else
Everything.
she was dealing with,
Valium.
Velma bought a bottle of arsenic poison.
Where do you buy arsenic?
I always wonder that. I'm like, where did you? It's just like a bottle with a skull and crossbones on it at the grocery store, and you're like,
Right.
oh, and grab this.
Good news, weirdos. Audible's Best of 2023 picks are here. Discover the year's top audiobooks, podcasts, and originals in all your favorite genres. From memoirs and unexpected witties,
Really fulfilled. /morbid. Masterclass, and you won't do it again. You'll start acting right, and you won't bother me anymore. So do you see the little switch?
That's sadistic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's like, up until this point, you're like, fuck, Velma, like, what a sad life. And like, damn, I'm feeling bad for you. And then at this point, you're like, oh,
Like,
look at that.
damn, sure.
Look at that. I don't feel that at all anymore.
No, I don't. And this man who has had chronic health problems,
And he just lost his wife.
and he lost his wife or best friend.
Yeah.
That is beyond.
Now, what's worse is, and maybe she didn't know this, or maybe she didn't care. Maybe she knew and she didn't care. But Jennings had come to the same conclusion.
He was gonna kill her.
He wasn't going to kill her.
Oh my god, I was like, what?
That their marriage had been an impulsive mistake.
Yeah.
And that it had been negative.
Right.
Like, he came to that. He was like, you know what?
What
Probably
did we
isn't
do
working.
here?
And in fact, just days before his death, Jennings had contacted his lawyer to discuss a divorce. He was a devout Christian, and he cared very much about how he was perceived by others. And he had become embarrassed by Velma's, what her addiction was doing to her erratic behavior. It had certainly become the subject of gossip around town at this point. And he was like, she doesn't want to take care of me. She doesn't really love me. Like, I can see this, and like, why am I
Like bickering.
And he's basically sitting there going, why am I making her take care of me when she doesn't love me?
Yeah, she's not happy. I'm not happy.
Like,
What
let's
are we
move
doing?
on.
So he went about this the
The smart
rational
way. Because he was like, you know what? Let's separate and we'll move on with our lives. Like, it'll be fine. We did this impulsive thing. Oops. Let's move on.
Yeah, that's great.
Unfortunately for
Can I
Jennings,
have some
his
steak
relationship came too late.
tonight?
Because on the afternoon of March 21st, Velma put the poison arsenic took effect almost immediately. It's unclear whether she felt, I mean, it's pretty clear to me, but it's unclear whether she felt guilty or was trying to, cover her tracks. But when it became apparent that Jennings couldn't breathe, she rushed him to Cape Fear Hospital. But doctors there weren't hopeful that he would make it through the night. And they were correct, because Jennings Barfield died the following morning from heart failure.
But did they think it was because of the emphysema?
That's the thing. She picked people who this would not be shocking that they died.
And they wouldn't look into it.
And they wouldn't look into it. And arsenic poisoning is a very tough one to, unless you are getting an autopsy because you think something happened.